Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning into the trade setup. And not as bad a morning as one would have thought last night when if you were looking at the US markets, because there was a very sharp recovery in the markets. Now the key moves that happened. One, the US Treasury yields jumped to around 1.8%. NASDAQ is now down almost 9% of its highs despite the recovery. And we'll talk about the recovery. At a point of time, it was down almost 10% or 11%. So over 10% from its highs. So that is the interesting thing. Bitcoin dropped below $40,000 for the first time since September. Now, some of these have reversed intraday yesterday in the US markets, and I'll talk about that. Bitcoin too has reversed a little bit. But the point being, viewers, one thing, there's this wonderful chart which shows how, while the treasuries are doing what they are doing and the dollar index is doing what it is doing, they apparently used to be, for a short period, an inverse correlation between the dollar and the S&P 500, and that seems to be fading a bit now. This is, of course, information for somebody who's very advanced in trading in the US markets, but there was, and it seems to be fading, and it seems to be following a bit of a pattern as well. Let's wait and watch. But pretty interesting what will happen to the DXY and the strength and the relative weakness in stocks at large in the US and outside the US. So let's wait and watch. By the way, speaking of strength, NASDAQ showed some strength, was down about 2.7% in a very strong bounce. The NASDAQ ended in the green. That was a telling part. So yes, one of the headlines that you would read is fifth straight day of fall in the US markets because the S&P and the Dow were in the red. Yes, but the story of yesterday was not about the fifth straight day of losses. The story of yesterday in the US markets is about the bounce back that the NASDAQ showed. As much as people like to believe, and maybe it is true, I have no idea, that with the taper and the Fed rate, the hikes around the corner, etc., that the buying the dips will not remain a strategy. For now, the dips are being bought into, so you've got to keep that in mind. But by the way, Wednesday, tomorrow is a big day because the US CPI numbers come out, and until then, maybe, just maybe, the markets would be a bit light. By the way, speaking of Bitcoin, that's the other one that has fallen off the cliff, really, down below 40,000 for the first time since September, and it's very near the September bottom. By the way, it bounced back to, after dipping below 40,000, it's back to 42,175, but the drawdown from the November peak reaches 40%. The question, viewers, that you got to ask yourself is, one, if the easy liquidity is going away, will it find a place in Bitcoin, of all places? That is part one, or some of the others. And I put out on a tweet today a very interesting piece of question that Tracy Alloway, my colleague in Bloomberg, is asking in the Bloomberg story today about what narrative does Bitcoin now have in the metaverse. It's a point to ponder if you are a Bitcoin aficionado. So please keep that in mind. Asia is okay, but the SGX Nifty, I mean, Nikkei started off with a bit of an uptick, etc. But and therefore the first day after a long holiday for the Nikkei, but some of the others are okay. But the SGX Nifty, true measure of what we could have in store today, indicating a start which is not too bad, and this should soothe some nerves. But by the way, we had a really splendid rally, some bit of a pullback. It's okay as well. But yeah, this is the point I was trying to make. Now, very quickly, when I was talking about a splendid rally, just bring up the MOV function and show you what happened in trade yesterday at the broader end of the spectrum. 338 advances to 158 declines. A bunch of stocks did really well. I mean, look at that. Suntec Realty, the update was not as strong as Soba and Oberoi, but that stock went up 11%. Greaves Cotton, about 19.69% at 209. Poonawalla FinCorp continues to rise and shine, 10% higher now for that one in yesterday's session, and now at 288. By the way, I think it's gained about 50%. At a point of time when financials are not doing anything, Poonawalla FinCorp has risen about 50% from its price. BHEL had big, strong build-up on the long side as well in trade yesterday. A lot of derivative positions out there. And some pharma names continued to sulk in trade yesterday, as well as IT continued to sulk in trade yesterday. So those are a few names that look slightly iffy. Heikel, remember we spoke about this yesterday, down about 3% too. So let's wait and watch what happens. They issued a clarification. I don't know if really people will have the confidence to go into a Heikel, considering a bunch of others which are doing equally good work and have no question marks on the standards and the practices that they follow for disposal. Let's wait and watch. What's the trade setup for the day today? Well, I think in technical parlance, Nifty crossed the prior swing highs of 17,944.70, particularly sustained above Ichimoku cloud formation levels, and sustained above the 100 days simple moving averages, all of which point to a bullish momentum, which is certainly there. Remember, there was a chart which we had shown, which showed how in this current spurt, because the Nifty is overtaken a particular line, it could reach all the way to 18,600. Who knows? It might turn out to be true. The Bank Nifty is driving gains. We spoke about this yesterday, that what will drive the mood in the index would be the Bank Nifty, because it was known that Nifty IT would be stable. Bank Nifty was up 1.6% yesterday, courtesy of which the Nifty gained about 1% yesterday. And it's probably this key to this week's moves for sure, the Bank Nifty. Real estate, textiles, and sugar remain the sectors to watch on dips. Really, I mean, we spoke about real estate all the day yesterday and the last few days, and look at the kind of gains that came into some of the stocks. Really quite stunning, and not just restricted to Suntech Realty. A bunch of other lesser known names also did really well. We always talk about Godrej Properties and Oberoi and Indiabulls Real Estate, which may have done okay, but the lesser known names, Century Textiles, GMR Infra, some of the southern names, all of which are doing quite exceptionally well, really. So that pocket certainly remains in focus. Flows not too bad. FI sold just about 124 crores. DI's got about 481 crores, so that's okay. And by the way, the SIP book is really strong. So courtesy the Indian retail investor, the broader end of the spectrum seems to be doing really okay. 11,000 crores in the month of December. That money finds its way in the SIP book, by the way. That money finds its way in the broader end of the spectrum, because multi-cap funds, flexi cap funds, all of those are getting monies, and therefore the activity, the broader end of the spectrum, is really, really strong. Now, what about results today? There's some small names like Ganesh Housing, etc., but I think the one to watch out for would be Delta Corp. They haven't been hit as badly probably in the October, November, December season, so the numbers could be okay. The interesting thing would be to figure out, because of Omicron, what are the kind of worries that come into the business, hospitality business and the casino business. I think the Goa has mandated 50% for casinos, or maybe shut them, either of the two. Please do your checks. But Delta Corp could be an interesting set of numbers today. What about stocks to watch? First of the block is Paytm, and fairly, or 197 Communications, whichever you want to look at it. But a fairly strong quarter. They disbursed loans worth about 2180 crores. The GMV, the gross merchandise value, as about 2.5 lakh crores. Average monthly transacting users rose to about 6.44 crores in Q3 as well. So, well, on all parameters, they seem to be doing really well on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But boy, I mean, yesterday the stock fell because of that Macquarie note. Zero opinion really on what Paytm could do. These numbers look okay, so maybe it bounces back. Just this is, of course, what's happened to Paytm really in over the last 3 days. But more importantly, if we can just go back to that plate, Virat, the other bit, and yesterday I was watching an interaction, I think on ET Now, where they're talking about how there might be some moves to restrict the market shares in the UPI segment. PhonePe and Google Pay have a lion's share, but if there is a restriction or a cap on the market share that each of these players would have, maybe it could be positive for the likes of Paytms and some of the others which are lagging behind in this race, so to say. So who knows? Watch out for that. PB FinTech was interesting. This is the Policy Bazaar portal, and their numbers looked okay too. Insurance premium originated was very strong YOY. Insurance premium for first year transaction through Policy Bazaar was also very strong. Disbursements of loans through Paisa Bazaar was also very strong. So clearly PB FinTech did really well. And again, one more stock which has really come off the boil. So while the Nykas and the Zomatos have stayed steady, and Nykaa too kind of corrected a little bit, but Zomato, etc., stayed steady, PB FinTech has consistently lost pricing and rather market cap. And in the last few weeks, it's come off quite rapidly from the peak of November 15th odd. It's come out quite rapidly. Can it bounce back? Let's wait and watch. The numbers seem okay, but let's see. The other one would be GMR Infra in focus today. And by the way, the airport business will be listed today. As I understand, there will be a proper price discovery and a listing, etc. So might happen at 10 a.m. GMR Power will be listed in February, Analysts pegged today's listing to have a fair value of between 35 to 45 rupees. Now it's all over the place really. Some people said that it is so fairly valued that they had anyways gotten out of it, so they don't believe that there is value here. But I spoke to some informed people who said that the stock could trade at about 35 rupees. So depends on where it lists, viewers. There might be a trade here in GMR Infra, the airport vertical, which is the one that will get listed today. GMR Power, remember, as I said, lists only in February. So keep this at the back of your mind. Some other stocks in focus include Timex, which has gotten the contract for manufacturing Guess and Gucci watches, if I'm not wrong, in India. Now, this could be big for Timex, so maybe the stock reacts positively. I haven't done the numbers, by the way. I'm just telling you what the news is. In case it reacts positively, you know why. Watch out for BHEL. Significant long build-up in trade yesterday, was up about 5%. And I hear of some rumors of some corporate development. Never know what could happen. There are multiple rumors around BHEL, so I urge you to be careful. But I just brought it out because it warranted. I heard it, I should bring it up. And PSU banks, wherein yesterday I think CNBC Awaaz reported this piece of news that the FI limit or FDI limit could be raised to 74% from 20%. Maybe it brings about some positivity. Let's wait and watch. Maybe it brings about flows for SBI. So watch out for PSU banks really. And they have said this will happen in budget. So that's the point. But viewers, I must urge all of you. I said this at the start of the year straight setup too. There will be at least 15 rumors from very credible people that will come out. 5 of them might be true, 10 of them might be false. Please be careful if you're trading them. I'm not saying people bring the news to the best of their abilities, but not everything turns out to be true. So please be careful if you're trading on some of these budget-related rumors. In my 15 years, I've seen more than half of them turn out to be false. So please be careful about some of these budget-related rumors, whether you see them on WhatsApp or through other forms of media. Of course, follow credible journalists. They usually get their information right, but because it gets clouded in so many rumors coming around the budget, that it kind of becomes a bit difficult to discern one from the other. Lastly, there's a note from Jefferies on steel. They have lowered their optimism on India metals as we enter 2022, downgraded some metal stocks. They believe that although easing policy could lift Chinese demand, they still find the risk reward much inferior to what it was a year ago. They've cut the FY23 EPS for Tata Steel and JSTL by 18-26% and 22% and 23% below the street estimates. Tata Steel is the big downgrade from a buy to a hold with a target price of 1240. The earlier target price was 1600. Could this be a problem for steel companies? SAIL, Tata Steel, JSW Steel, Jindal Steel, and Power today. Let's wait and watch. They've had a good move. I mean, this is the price movement, of course, over the last 12 months. But the point I'm making is, could today's session be marred for some of the steel stocks? That's a question you've got to ask yourself. I leave you with the thought, viewers. Jefferies has not downgraded Hindalco. They're saying that they're still positive on the aluminum companies. And we learned this morning that there are massive production cuts across the world in aluminum. So in France, Dunkirk, there is a production cut by 15%. Spain, Alcoa's, the Spain plant has halted production in 2024. Norway Hydro has cut 60% production in Slovakia smelter. Uniprom smelter in Montenegro has cut production as well. Multiple smelters across Europe are cutting production because of higher costs, power cuts. You remember, gas prices have moved up, and therefore the power prices are high, and the cuts, the power cuts are also too frequent. So some of these have cut production quite drastically. The supply of aluminum will not be as strong as otherwise would have been anticipated. Maybe there is merit in looking at aluminum stocks slightly differently from steel stocks. Stay safe. If you're stepping out, please stay masked up. Omicron is not causing as much fatality, which is a great piece of news. But let's just keep the damn virus at bay. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a safe, profitable day ahead.